Hello friends, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. It's been a few days since my last video. Had a lot on my plate. So, way too many ideas, not enough time, but I was also feeling a little bit in a funk. And a great way to deal with that is to just play. I've said this before, like create backgrounds, play. And that's somewhat what I did here. I had already kind of an idea of what I wanted to do for this card. And I also knew the colors because this was actually for last week's color throwdown challenge, which was basically a beige, brown, and like a blue, which I was, again, heavily influenced by the image for the color throwdown challenge, which I'll share. That the challenge is over for last week, but there's a new one every week. It's always inspiring. I've mentioned it in a ton of videos. I'll have the image and a link to it in my blog post. So I pulled out some Distress Oxide sprays and I just just played with them. I think that's one of the reasons why I really do. And it's one of the reasons I love the sprays is me being a control freak. Sprays don't always do what you want them to do. You know, you got to just go with it. And so I actually enjoy that. You know, it just makes me take little detours and play and all that kind of stuff. So I'm using Canson XL watercolor paper. That's what I use for the background. And I also die cut some pieces. And I'm just working on my little glass mat here. Again, just because I was like, different surface. Why not? Whether you're using sprays or you could use inks, ink smushing, all those things, the surface you work on can also affect how things are going to look. So if you're using like a nonstick craft sheet, that will look different than glass. It's one of those things where it's like, you got to take my word for it. But trust me, it actually does make a difference. When you work on a nonstick craft sheet, you get more of like the ink beads up more. So you get more of that splotchy look. With glass, you can see it here, how the ink from the sprays, it kind of just smooths out. Again, I was just going with it. So I had used Antique Linen Distress Oxide spray first. And then for these die cut pieces, it was a kind of a mixture of the Antique Linen and Vintage Photo. Now, if you have never used Vintage Photo Distress Oxide, there's something kind of unique. There's a few in the whole Oxide line that they're kind of just very interesting colors that will do sort of interesting things. And Vintage Photo, in my opinion, is one of them. It oxidizes in a funny way and it creates a fun look. So I had done my background, like I said, with the Antique Linen. And then these die cut pieces, I was using Simon's Etched Oak Leaves, which I'm obsessed with. I love the detail of these because there's like the piercing, there's slits in the die cuts which make inks and sprays and all those things do different things because there's all that texture in it. And then the other die cut I'd used was the ACORN Trio. I also die cut some of that Canson XL watercolor paper with a little tag die that's from the CZ Design nested tags. And with that one, I'm using Uncharted Mariner Distress Oxide spray. I've had the whole Uncharted Mariner collection since it came out. Was that back in June or July? Whenever it was. It has been sitting on my desk and I think I've used it a couple times, but I haven't really given it its moment. So I did that here and this is such a gorgeous color. In my head, I always think of this as more of like a turquoise. It's not. It's definitely more of a blue. And it is very pretty. So like I mentioned, you could totally do things like this with inks. It doesn't have to be sprays. I purposely stuck with the sprays for most of this just to play. So I was, inking and smushing and splattering and all the things. And I love the texture it created on that tag. Another thing I pulled out was some crackle paste. This is another one where when I pull out my crackle paste, I always enjoy it and remind myself why I don't know why I put it away. It's fun. So that background that I did at the very beginning was dry. And then I'm applying crackle paste over this stencil that came out whenever, last year, the year before. No, a few years ago. It's a tumbling leaf stencil anyway. Applied the crackle paste over that stencil. Let the crackle paste dry. This is opaque crackle paste. So the opaque crackle paste will absorb if you apply inks or pinks or things over it. The fun thing though with crackle paste is here I'm using some of that Uncharted Mariner spray. I added a bit of water and I'm splattering it on top. The splatter will not sit on top of that dry crackle paste. It immediately like wicks into all of the cracks. Love it. It's fun. It's one of those things I highly recommend. You know, if you want to just play around, get some crackle paste, some inks, you know, and just see what happens. It's interesting. So everything does look like a hot mess, but it comes together. I wanted to add the Uncharted Mariner to the background to bring in more of that like blue color. So I was doing some splattering, a little bit of smushing, just kind of letting it do its thing. I also even splattered just water because of course all of this is water reactive. And then I picked up a lot of it with just a tissue just to lighten it up a bit. I didn't want it to be intense. I didn't want my background to be super, super busy. So everything is dry at this point. All of my die cut pieces and the background, the tag, everything is dry. So I'm going to adhere the little tops of my ACORN. Those I spray just directly with that vintage photo distress oxide spray, so that they'd be nice and dark. And then I'm going to glue those onto their little ACORN bodies. And once I've got those, I was thinking while I was doing this, I was like, I need more depth to everything. So, you know, brain is just going. So I took my guillotine trimmer. I'm going to trim down my background. And when working with crackle paste, pretty much any paste really, when you trimmed like over it, especially though with crackle paste, little pieces are going to come off. I'm not worried about it. Doesn't need to be perfect. This is, you know, mixed media at its finest, which I've said I dabble in it. I'm not 100% like comfortable with it, but it is fun. You know, you just got to go with it. So I trimmed down the background. I die cut some dark brown cardstock. I die cut the little reinforcer for the tag and just adhered that. And I also die cut that brown cardstock with the Thanks wafer die. This wafer die does have an outline as well, but I just wanted the word. So I die cut that 3 times, stack them together with craft tacky glue to give it the dimension that I live. So got those stacked together so that they're, you know, they've got dimension and a bit of, it just intensifies it a bit, in my opinion. It's amazing how something as simple as like die cut a sentiment 3 times, stack them together, it literally looks completely different. So while I was doing all that, you know, I'm thinking about like more depth. I wanted to bring in more brown. So I pulled out vintage photo distress ink, my little mini ink cube, and I've got my little blending foam that I keep with the mini ink cubes because it fits perfectly in the bottom like it's all meant to be. And I'm just lightly blending this here and there around the edges of this panel. Again, the dried crackle paste does like take on that ink, which again, live. And I'm just going with it. You know, I again, if you guys watch my videos, I don't normally go for the grungy, you know, the browns, all that, but it's fun when I do. So I started there, you know, blended that, and I was like, okay, I'm liking this. And then I added just some twine to the tag because, you know, you got to finish off the tag. It can't just be there. I don't know. It's force of habit. So I took a bit of my little AmyR twine, doubled it up, put it through the hole in the tag, tied it in a knot, and then trimmed it off. Just so that's got that little finishing bit. And then I also decided to add some of that vintage photo to the edges of the tag, just here and there. Not a lot, but, you know, just to, again, kind of grungify it up a little bit. And then also to the die cut pieces. And I was really liking that. It just, again, it gives it that extra level of a little bit of depth I didn't want to cover because you can see all the detail and the little bits that like oxidize, because vintage photo oxidizes in a interesting way. So added that to all of these little die cut pieces. I was able to, you know, darken the little stems on these acorns, which is perfect. Added a little bit to the acorn bodies just to give them a little more color. And then I decided to rough up the edges. This used to be the thing that we all used to do way back in the day, you know, when card making was in its infancy. There's a tool, and I think it's still available. Tim Holtz like re-released it. It's a little tool you can use for like roughing up the edges. I have it somewhere. I haven't pulled it out in years. But you can use your fingernails or you can use the edge of scissors. I only did it a little bit here and there. It just, you know, roughs up the edge. And then I inked up those roughed up edges with the vintage photo ink. And it just, again, it just kind of intensified it a little bit and gave it that little extra bit of grunge, you know, removes the thought of perfection, because like I would say, perfection is totally overrated, especially in card making. So I've got all my pieces. It's now time to start like assembling this card. So my card base, I just kept with white cardstock. And I took a sentiment from the extra talkative stamp set, because there's just a bunch of sentiments in there that I love, and I like the size of them too. And this one I thought is just perfect. I could put this in every single card. Like, everyone needs to hear this because it's true. So I stamped that with the Uncharted Mariner Distress Oxide ink, and then I added one of the die cuts and one of the little acorns to the inside of the card. And I trimmed down a sentiment strip from the All the Thanks sentiment strips that I've used in a bajillion videos. And that I ink blended some Uncharted Mariner, just the regular distress ink, just to get everything a little more matchy-matchy on camera. At least from editing, it's hard to see the sentiment now, but it's easy to read in real life. So I have everything ready to go, so I'm just going to start assembling. I adhered the tag with some thin foam squares, and then I adhered my leaves and my little acorns. The sentiment, I did a combo of the little bit of foam squares on the end, and then the craft tacky glue to get that lined up. And then I adhered my sentiment strip. That is going to be crooked until the end of the video. I noticed it before I filmed the end bit. I was like, what? Yeah, I adhered it crookedly, and it was driving me insane. Like right there, I can see it, you know, it gets fixed before the card is over. I just very gently, because the sentiment strip is adhered with foam squares, I gently lifted them up and then shuffled the sentiment up a little bit and straightened it out. So we're good to go. And then my last little bit of embellishment is some Studio Claudia dark chocolate pearls, because honestly, I went through, and I've said this, I have like multiple lifetimes of bling. I do not have any that match Uncharted Mariner. Trust me, I went through all my trays, everything. I couldn't find any. I'm actually shocked. This color is definitely unique. If I don't have a match for it in bling, you know it's unique. So anyway, I added some bling, and then I paired this with one of Simon's bronze envelopes, and that finished it off. This was fun. It was a fun little experiment, and just, it was fun to get inky. I still have a few little like ink stains trapped, you know, that I'll scrub off a little later. And yeah, as always, I will have a link below the video to my blog post. I'll have the links to the Color Throwdown Challenge. I'll have a supply list, links to all the supplies I used. You can check that out below if you are interested. Thank you all so much for watching and commenting, thumbs upping, letting the robot overlords know you like my videos. It definitely helps. Subscribe if you haven't. And I will see you all very soon in the next video. Bye!